Hello. I want to start by welcoming everybody here today when we welcome our candidates, our moderators and timekeepers and volunteers today, and citizens and residents that showed up. And so this event today is hosted by the Groveland Historical Society, which is right across the way from us here. And our normal hours are Saturdays from 1 to 3. We're open every day. It's free, so you're welcome to come every Saturday and come look around and learn about the history of Groveland. But today we're going to be talking to our candidates. And so our candidates today are Mrs. Diana Sweat, Evelyn Wilson, Keith Kehoe, and Amy Carroll. And so we'd like to thank them all for coming today. Our moderators today are myself, Jason Brown, president of the Historical Society, and Sharon Keeble, editor of the Claremont Sun, and Mr. Banks Alfred is our timekeeper today. So the rules for today's town hall is going to be a Q&A. This is not a debate format, and candidates will not be given time to respond to other candidates. Each candidate will be given up to 2 to 3 minutes to answer questions, but you do not need to use your full time, and the candidates have not been given the questions prior to the event. We do ask the candidates as well as the audience to be respectful and refrain from profane language. And following the Q&A, there will be 30 minutes for refreshments and a meet and greet, so candidates can have an opportunity to speak to citizens directly. And so with our first question today is...
Please introduce yourselves.
We start with Ms. Sweat.
I'm Dina Sweat. I've lived in Groveland for over 22 years this month. I have one son, and I have been on council since 2014, but due to unforeseen circumstances, I lost one election, and I won again in 2022. And now I'm up for re-election again. Yes, and I was vice mayor and mayor.
Hi. First of all, I want to thank the Historical Society for holding this, and Sharon for moderating, and thanks for being the timekeeper. And thank you all for coming. I am Evelyn Wilson. I am the mayor of Groveland. This is my 6th year. Before that, previously, I had been on the council for District 4 for two separate terms. And I've been in Groveland since 2006, been in Florida since 1976. Thank you.
My name is Keith Kehoe. I'm a farmer up the road, Olive Isle Family Farm, running for the position of Groveland Mayor. I'm a native Floridian, born and raised up in Lake Mary, so I've been here since 1952. But I really appreciate this chance. I hope we have a chance to have more of these face-to-face debates. I think the public really needs this kind of information, and the Q&A is a great way to get the correct information out to the public. So thank you all so much for putting that together.
I'm Amy Jo Carroll. I'm running for seat 5. This is my first time doing anything like this, so brand new to this whole format. I have 9 kids. I'm a swim instructor and aquatics instructor. I do drowning investigations and train lifeguards. So that's my background. I come from all things water. But I also manage a household with 9 kids. So, and we make it all work, and they all get to school and do homework and things like that. So there we go. And thank you for having us. Really appreciate this.
And so some of you already answered this, but when did you move to Groveland, if you moved here, and what were some of the aspects of the city that made you decide to move here?
Well, the first time I ran, I lost, but I came to a couple of council meetings and I didn't like what was going on, so I thought I'd take a shot and run and see if I could make a difference. But I lost. I ran 2 years after that and lost, but 2 years after that, I won. And I got on council and we started doing different things, hired a lot of different people, and things started to move very slowly, but they didn't really start taking off until Mr. Hine showed up. And when Mr. Hine came, we really started moving, and we've been moving ever since. And being on council, you have a lot of decisions to make. Some of them are not easy because you have to know what you can and can't do. But I believe I'm making a difference and I enjoy doing it.
Can I clarify with what you said? Did you ask with council or moving to Groveland?
I said moving to Groveland.
Okay. My husband was retiring from the telephone company down in West Palm, and I was working at the time for Washington Mutual, the mortgage area, and I would be inputting applications for loans, and I kept seeing the Orlando area. And houses for the size of a house up here was much less than down in West Palm. Also insurance and a number of things, which made it very inviting. So we moved up here in 2006, moved into a brand new development and got involved with coming to meetings, and then got involved with the museum and fell in love with Groveland. I adopted Groveland, Groveland adopted me. And one of the reasons we moved to Groveland and had bought a decent sized house was I was gonna have lots of grandkids, and they were all gonna come and visit grandma and grandpa and go to Disney. And lo and behold, best laid plans go astray. So with my grandkids living all over the country, I ended up making Groveland my family, my kids. Our employees in the city are my kids. Yesterday, I got to honor one of our student school resource officers for through the South Lake area. And it was a wonderful event, like all the events that are honoring. Thank you.
Well, I'm a little different. I grew up in Lake Mary. I don't know how many of you know Lake Mary now, but in the days I grew up, it was so small. My mother was my second grade teacher at the elementary school, and it had a real culture and a real heart that when we moved down to, after I married my lovely wife there, and moved down to Orlando, I missed it, so we moved out to Claremont, and then because I was working at Disney for 25 years, and so that was a great commute. And then I had to leave the state for a while to take over as CEO of a company. And when we came back, we came right back to Claremont. But that was 7 years later, and the culture and the heart of Claremont had changed. And when we were looking around for our next step, we found Groveland. And Groveland was like Lake Mary was when I grew up. When we went to Lake Catherine to the parties, everybody said, "Hi, how are you? And who are you from? And you're not from here." And it just reminded me so much of that heart and culture that I grew up with, that kind of born from the earth kind of culture that they find in agriculture and farming communities. And so we found this. It's funny, the island that we ended up buying wasn't even advertised here. I was out in Vegas doing another job and getting ready to retire from there, and found it online and came back and took a tour around the island. It was covered with shrubs and stuff. We hardly could get through without a machete, and said, "And this is the perfect place, it's a place to have a farm, it's a place to settle down, it's a place to have our grandkids, let them loose and let them run, and there's nowhere that anybody would have to worry about anything but probably alligators and snakes, and we got the dog to take care of that." So, but I moved here because of the heart of the city.
I'm also a Florida native. I grew up in Seminole County too, a few years after Keith did. Just a handful. So I grew up in Castleberry, which at that time was a small town still, and I watched it grow. From the area we moved into was just a dirt road with nothing. And now when I go there, the house I grew up in actually has been paved over, and there's a little patch of banana trees next to the road, and that was my backyard when I was a child. So that's kind of how I marked the location there, which my kids think is really weird. That's okay. So when I moved from there, I moved out to East Orlando. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Lake Mary Jane area. So I moved there, and again, was living in a small kind of community, and we loved it. And now it's like, no. So we were looking for somewhere else to go that was the community. I don't want my kids to grow up in just a city or a suburb. I want them to grow up in a community. And I think that's what we need, is a lot of things to bring us all back together. And that's what drew me to Groveland, was the small town feel and the community.
With the vast amount of subdivisions inundating Groveland and its rural areas, what do you see as the most important thing that Groveland has done to keep up with and control the growth? What do you think the city has not done enough of and that they need to improve on in order to handle the growth?
I think that one of the main things is that we made an ordinance that 50% of our land will stay natural. We've got the green swamp here, and we've got throughout the area a number of lakes. There are a number of areas where there can be preserves and walking trails as they're working on the different trails in our parks and everything. What was the second part?
What do you think the city has not done enough of and that they need to do to improve on in order to handle the growth?
The thing is, we all of a sudden grew basically overnight. So we weren't really ready for it. And so a lot of the developments had already been put in the record. They had their permission, the people had sold their property, and these developments are already on the books, which ties the hands of the city officials and staff. One of the things, unfortunately, everything takes time. You have to have patience. We need business. That's going to balance out with the property taxes that people don't, that it won't always be on the residents' shoulders to pay the taxes. There's business coming. There is a lot of interest coming to the city. I noticed last week, they're about, I'd say, halfway finished on 27.
Well, as the mayor has said, we have a lot of walking trails, a lot of parks, and we're planning more because the city has to have a certain number of parks. So along with that, we're doing walking trails. We've got a lot of green space that we're planning on keeping. So that's one big thing. And then we've got the big park that's coming down here, the regional park that's over there on Max Hooks Road. That will be a big hit with the families, with all the ball games, the basketball, and football, and baseball, softball, anything you can think is going to be out of that field, and that's a good thing. And we also need, the one thing that we don't have enough of is businesses, and it's not that easy to get a business to come into Groveland because we don't really have buildings that they can just take over. They have to build theirs now, and Fort Commerce Park is practically full. I mean, there is some space out there, but it's going to cost a little bit more than usual to put a building in Groveland. but we're still hoping that people will come. But the worst thing that Groveland has is their communication. We have to find a way to get the news out to the residents without having to post it everywhere in sight. I mean, we have the billboard out here, we have the water bill, but that's still not enough because a lot of people don't hear or see what's going on in Groveland, and we need to find a way to make that happen.
So I think things we have not done, maybe, is to have the developers pay for the growth. After listening to the Mineola people, after the last forum we had, it was fascinating because I've been talking about seeing if we could do some of these things, but wasn't sure if they were actually feasible, but yes, they are. So before you allow the community to build, you can make them put the red light in. You can make them widen the road. You can make them put the turn lane in. And those things are all necessary for the growth so that we have the infrastructure to maintain the growth. Schools, we do have limited control over, but you can make them donate the land for the school. Because we need Lake County to add more schools because that becomes a huge problem. Once you get so many homes and then you have 2,500 children at the elementary school. And speaking for Lake Nona area, they opened 4 relief schools and now all the elementary schools are good, but you heard me right, 4 relief schools from 1. So that's a lot of growth. We can't maintain that. Nobody can. So you have to make them pay for it as you go so that it's not on the shoulders of all the residents, because it shouldn't be. Also, as far as businesses go, we do have land for businesses. We need to encourage our residents to have businesses. So how do we do that? If you've been a resident, I think maybe we need to look at cutting our impact fees for our residents to open businesses. So if they've been a resident for a certain amount of time, we can look at some of those things. Like, hey, maybe we can start a program to reduce those impact fees for businesses or residents. I'm not really in favor of cutting impact fees for other businesses, but if you're already a resident, you're already invested in our community. And that's how I look at that.
Well, I would go with what we've done right. The city has put in a future land use plan that kind of designates that 51% of the land to be green space or agriculture. It sounds like a lot, but really most of it is governed by the state. The green swamp area and everything else is already protected. So we've designated that. So now we have 49% left. In that 49% left, we have 25,000 homes that since 2002 have been approved to be built here in the city. And that's the challenge that we face. Some of them, their PUDs were approved long before the land use plan. Mr. Maslow's doing a really good job of going out and trying to convert, and the city council has done a good job also of trying to pressure people towards our new building code versus our old, and we've had some areas that we can make progress in there. At the end of the day, the long-term solution would be find out exactly who is going to build. I've talked to some of these PUDs, 1,400 homes up the street here, that was approved, and they only had that land approved so they could raise the value of the land so they could get a higher line of credit for their business. So we actually need to go and do a study on who's actually wanting to build, who's going to build, then go back and say, okay, now what are we liable for? We just had a meeting this last week where, correct me if I'm wrong, the budget with capital in was like $327 million for this year, $327 million for a 25,000 population. That's just the construction alone is well over $10,000 per resident for the construction going on. So we really need to understand what are those houses are going to be built, and then how are we going to prioritize the use of this new land use, because these new plans, because at the end of the day, we're liable for all of that. And we might have to put a moratorium on new, can I carry over to the next time?
So what are your opinions on budget reforms? Also, there has been a lot of concern about the number of Groveland employees and salaries compared to surrounding cities. If elected, what do you plan to do to increase transparency of the budget and employment records so that they can be more easily viewed by the residents.
I guess I'll go first, but I won't finish that up. This is a really hot topic with me. Every business I've ever been in, nobody cares about the head count. We budget head count. For every 1,000 people, you get so many people to work. You can't take head count to the bank, and head count doesn't reduce it. It's revenue versus cost. We need to go ahead and say the budget should be this amount of labor cost for this amount of revenue. So as revenue goes up, more people can be hired. As revenue goes down, you have to look at how you're going to keep that in line. Head count means nothing because you can have 5 people each making $1 million, or you can have 1,000 people each of them making $1,000. You know, I don't care. That's the city manager's job to monitor and take care of making sure there's effective labor being used. It's our job as city council, or will be as city council, to make sure that we're proportionally in line. Head count, you can have, 150 and say, so does Claremont, but until you match salary to salary, it's the cost to the city that really is the issue. And that shows the efficiencies also. When you have labor costs versus revenue, it shows great progress and efficiencies of where opportunities may exist to create more efficiency. So they're bringing a little bit of business into this budgeting process. Business knowledge, I think, can add another layer. They can give the transparency, but I don't think the public really cares. I worked for a guy at Disney that made $175 million a year. You remember those bonuses way back when? But he brought in $4 billion, and the shareholders said, okay, it's all return on investment. So I go back to the cost of labor instead of head count and really match it up to year over year to see if we're gaining efficiencies.
So when we were starting to look over the budget in the PowerPoint, it kept coming up that we have 70 non-public safety positions and 106 public safety positions. But again, if you elaborate on what Keith just said, that really doesn't tell us anything because we don't know how much those people are making. So as far as budgeting, that didn't help anyone look at anything. Well, we had requested some HR files back in, I think it was February, and we're given, so as public records request, we were given an invoice for that. We paid half up front, and then that came back like a month and a half later, and they wanted $2,500 for that public records request. Oh, just $2,000, my bad. Got a little carried away there. $2,000 for the public records request. So I'm thinking that's not very transparent, because that's crazy, right? $2,000 is a lot of money to find out where our money is going. I think we need to sit down, budget, go over all of it, and figure out where all the money's going, down to the penny. We need a penny finder. So we need everybody to look through it all the way, find out where those pennies are going, and the dollars, because the dollars are a big thing too. But everything adds up, so we need to know where everything's going. We need to know why we're spending money on that. And also, there needs to be a limit on how much they can spend without directly asking the council for approval. As we went into some other things, we've recently found the contractor was paid $163,000 for a project. And as far as we can tell, the council didn't directly approve that. That seems like a lot of money to me. Like, that's like my husband going out and buying a Corvette without asking me, and I'd be pretty mad. Be really mad about that. Same concept.
The council has budget workshops. We sit down with Joanne and her team, and we go through the budget line by line. And sometimes it can take 2 or 3 hours. They show us where every penny is being spent, how much is being spent, what is going to be needed for the future. But before anybody gets a raise, like with the police, the fire, basically anybody who works for the city, we do studies at the 5 cities around to find out what they're paying their employees. And then Groveland tries to get as close to that as possible. Sometimes it's not possible, so we give them a raise that Groveland can afford without putting ourselves in debt. But Mr. Hine has a budget where he does not have to come to the council to spend a certain amount of money, especially when it's an emergency. Like with this problem with the construction on the highway, we had to move some pipes. That was an emergency. He did not have to get in touch with us to get approval for that. But we do what we can with the budget. And like I said, we go over line by line. And sometimes we don't always agree with what the finance director or Mr. Hine has said. Like this time, we decided we were not going to raise the ad valorem, so we can find that money someplace else, which we did. So it's right now it's at a 5.5, where before it was a 5.2, but we did that for 5 years, and that turned out to be the council's fault because we didn't want to raise taxes. But we do what needs to be done, and the council is the one who makes those decisions. As Mr. Hine runs the city, but we run Mr. Hine. And he doesn't have to get approval from the council for everything that he does.
I want to stay in line with what parameters are. Am I allowed to respond to explain some of the things that were stated?
I don't think you need to directly respond, but if it's in part of your answer to your own question, then that would be fine, but not directly respond to any specific person, but just
No,
total topic.
it's things that are said that it is made understanding because there's false information or it's not out there.
I think as long as you give the correct information, that would be
If I'm
fine.
wrong, shut me up, okay? All right, with the public records requests, I spent, because it was brought up at a council meeting, I went to our city clerk because I was shocked with the amount of what was said it was costing. And I went and I called the city clerk and I said, could I come down and talk to you and find out, how is this possible? And so I went there, I spent 2.5 hours with her and somebody from her department. The amount of time to put these documents together, that is a lot of work. Plus, asking for 10 files of staff, those files have to be redacted. And when it is redacted, you have to put a certain code, the statute that goes with that redaction. So that's even more work. Then it has to go to the attorney for her to look it over. Yes, they tell you right up front, certain things cost a certain amount, amount of time. After that, it is such an amount for whatever. And those who know how long I've been in the city and been involved know that my husband used to be the king of public records requests when there were issues here in the city, real issues. So when you talk about salaries, we have anybody have more questions you can ask me?
So, there are many new Groveland residents that work and shop in Orlando and other cities who are not aware of the downtown and businesses of Groveland. What plans do you have to promote the core of Groveland to these outlying communities and encourage local job opportunities for them?
Can you speak a little bit louder, because I'm getting back from this thing over here.
Do you want the whole question? The whole question?
The whole question.
Yes, please. So there are many new Groveland residents that work and shop in Orlando and other cities who are not aware of the downtown and businesses of Groveland. What plans do you have to promote the core of Groveland to these outlying communities and encourage local job opportunities for them?
That has always been a big problem for Groveland, communication. When I first moved here in 2002, we had to go to Claremont to buy groceries. Claremont to buy clothes or shoes, and that just irritates me. I want everything to be in Groveland so I don't have to leave Groveland to go do my shopping. So now we have Publix, which is a lot easier for grocery shopping, but we still have to go into Claremont or Ocoee or Orlando to do other shopping because I don't know about everybody else, but I don't like going to the same Walmart all the time. I like to have surprises. So sometimes I'll go to Target, sometimes I'll go to JCPenney, but I still have to go out of Groveland into Claremont. Until we can get people to move into Groveland with businesses, with stores, clothing stores, shoe stores. I mean, good Lord, we've already got enough car park stores, but now we need a little bit of everything else. Even a second grocery store would be welcome. But until we can get the word out, and I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do that, because like I said, communication is the worst thing ever. We can put it in the water bill, they pay the bill and don't read it. We can put it on the sign out here by the road, but if they don't come through Groveland, they don't see it. So how do we get the word out? That's the biggest problem that we face.
Businesses, the city down here is small, so there's limited amount of area for businesses, but there's still areas, there's different types of businesses. I know everyone here likes the historic atmosphere of downtown, and that's what we need to keep. That is the walkability and enticing, engaging people to bring their businesses here. This past week, I have talked with two different retail developers and discussed different areas with them. They are bringing some businesses here. I want them also to look in other areas of Groveland. Groveland is 35 square miles. It is a large city. Everything doesn't need to be on 50. We have 27, which I believe is going to be your main hub for shopping, for restaurants, the big box stores, the different things. And that's what I was starting to say about the racetrack gas station that is about half built on 27 now, is going to start the interest. A lot of people don't know how big Groveland is and the different areas. That's the thing. We need to be out there engaging. But unfortunately, it's the businesses that come to us. We can make calls, hundreds of calls a day to different businesses. And you're lucky if you get 3 people to respond. And then you're lucky if one ends up to be a positive connection.
Well, some good points there, but I would go back to identifying what the root cause is and being able to set businesses up for success downtown. I think that was the question, is parking. When you only have 2 parking spaces in front of your place and somebody's going by and they want to get a drink, and those parking spaces are full, you go on to the next place because there's a lot of other opportunities. We can look at other cities like Mount Dora and even Winter Park, and when they put a small parking garage in, how it really increased the amount of not only small businesses, but the type of businesses that were there to make it walkable. And it's great to have a walkable downtown, but somebody's got to come here in order to get out of the car and walk. and we're missing that issue. So parking is a big issue. Second issue is, yes, 27 is a great example of where more things can be. Let's look at it like Winter Garden did. That is the big box stores out there. What's the personality of downtown? Don't develop the culture and the heart out of downtown, the 6-story buildings and all this other stuff. Make sure that we maintain our culture and have those big boxes out where people have an easy in and egress and in and out. So I would look at it from two different standpoints. Having worked for Fortune 500 companies has put in some of those big boxes. If we could get healthcare as part of our strategic initiatives here, to where when you get a hospital, when you get like a U of F or an Advent, it brings in small businesses because it becomes the anchor for those small businesses. You've all seen that happen. And what happens? Here comes the restaurants right behind. There's a reason why chain restaurants are next to a mall or next to a big boxes, because they don't have to pay for all that parking lot, right? And those businesses are busy during the day, and the restaurants are busy at night. So it really helps utilize that land in a very efficient way.
Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of feed off of that, because that's really where I'm going with this. The small businesses stay downtown, the big box stores will kind of keep them over at 27. We absolutely need more parking. I don't believe we should ever, for any reason, have any building over 3 stories high in downtown, ever. It should have, if we build anything new, it should have to match the architecture of some building downtown, because they are different. So pick one, take your pick, match that. Just so it kind of keeps its character. As far as telling people what's down here, have a featured business of the week or month on Facebook and just start telling people about what's down here. Make deals with them. Be like, hey, if we put this out there, will you offer a special for our residents? The small businesses are usually all about that. Free advertising for a dinner special or ice cream special or tea special. They're really very helpful with those sorts of things. So as far as getting the word out, that's easy to do, but we have to have a place for people to park. Just to tell you, I drive by a lot of the times, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna stop there, and I get there, and I'm like, no, I'm not. Because I have to get myself and 4 kids out of the car and not get run over, and that sounds really difficult, so then I change my mind. So I'm sure some of you have that same experience.
Since before its incorporation, the people of the Groveland area held education as a top priority, and the Groveland schools have had graduate school on to do many important things. In recent years, the quality of many of our schools has been declining. What do you believe the city can and should do to bring respect back to our education system?
So I think the biggest thing for schools to succeed is how involved the community is going to be. The communities prop up the schools. Having parents being involved and having neighborhood events at the schools, all of those things help. Having sports leagues at the schools, having it become a meeting place for children and families is a big way to build community around the school and help support the school. The problem we have here is a lot of my neighbors, I don't know very many kids that go to my neighborhood schools. They all go to Mascot Charter, they go to Pinehurst, they go to Grassy Lakes, they use school choice and they use charter schools. So how do we draw our residents back to our schools? We have to do that by building the community around the school and making it an enticing place to be. My kids do go to Groveland schools, just to say that. They do, but none of our neighbors do. My 2 kids are the only ones that get on the bus in my neighborhood, so it pulls up right from the house.
Such great points there. And I'd add, when we started out with a conversation about our heart and being from the agricultural base. I remember when we had carnivals to support the schools. I remember even 10 years ago when we lived in Windermere, having events that raise money for the schools. It doesn't only raise money, it's a fun way to get people involved in the school and get some pride in the school. We can't just keep building charter schools and abandoning the schools that are already there. We have to upgrade those schools, and it takes participation of the community. And if we put it in a way, in a format to make it fun, I know the strategic planning committee before it was disbanded was working on a kids rodeo. as an event that would benefit the schools. I don't know how many of you have been where they ride the sheep and all that kind of stuff, but it really creates a gathering place. I mean, right now, our only gathering place is the second Friday. And we all come, I come the second Friday to have a few glasses of wine and find out what's going on in the city. The more of these carnivals and the more of these things that we can have to really benefit the schools and showcase the school, so people are talking about the school with pride instead of in defending the school, rather than just accepting what comes out on its ranking, the better our school system will be and the more pride our students will have in that school. It's got to be demoralizing to walk around in the city and hear people talking about, I'm sending my kids there or here because that school isn't so good, you know? We have to get everybody in a fun way. You know, it's an old Walt Disney thing. It's better to entertain and hope to educate than educate and hope to entertain. We need to develop some entertaining ways to get people involved in the school system and raise funds for the schools to get them up to standard and beyond where we can even imagine it can be right now.
The city does, there are a few different groups in the city which work with the kids and try to get the parents involved. And it's understandable, the same way as getting people to run for council who are younger instead of a bunch of old people, with the exception of Amy. I'm not the youngest, but I'm not the oldest on the council. But I understand that young families, they're busy with their families. Some of them have 2-3 jobs. So that is part of the problem. I have started, or it is just in the first phase, which I had tried to get started 5 years ago already, a junior council. We just started to get people to, we've got a few applicants. There's the Explorers Group, which was really good. It disbanded. Why? I don't know, but they did events. They, heck, I got to be a chaperone to go up to Tallahassee when they received an award for missing children. They worked on a program. We've got the robotics group. We've got the Cub Scouts. Now, I don't know if you're down here in Groveland or if it's in Claremont or where. We used to have a women's club here, a Mascot Groveland Women's Club. That disbanded also. People, they have certain things they want to be involved in and certain things they don't. Friday nights is finally picking up, the second Friday.
My granddaughter came to Groveland 2 years ago, and we put her in Groveland Elementary. So to be part of that, I went to Miss Moses, who is the principal, and I joined every group they had. But it didn't matter because people, or should I say the parents of the kids, very few attended any of these meetings, like the PTA or the SAC. And I did everything I could to get them to understand you need to get more information out to the parents. But it's like Ms. Wilson said, some people want to take interest, some people don't. So instead of having fundraisers, they would send flyers home for the children. Well, we're going to have field day, and you have to pay $20 for your child to attend the field day. If you don't pay, they can't go. Excuse me, but this is field day and all these kids go to the school. You can't let them stand there and look out the window at the other kids having fun if their parents can't pay. Have a fundraiser, do a carnival. Do something to raise the money so all the children can get a t-shirt and go to field day. Then they have the field trips, and you pay out the yin-yang for them to go on the field trips. And you have to follow certain rules while you're on the field trip. And some of the parents who are chaperones, they don't pay as much as it costs to go to a field trip, so they go on that just so they can go to Disney or Universal or SeaWorld. And SeaWorld turned out to be a disaster because every single school in the county was there the same day. Just to get on one ride took like 3 hours. And we're only there for 5. So you can imagine how long it took just to ride 2 rides. But they do have other things at the school where
Recently, it was determined that every school in the area is over 100% capacity and some up to 150%, so that children are having to sit on the floor in the dark classrooms. With more families moving in every day, what will you do to push for increased school capacity?
well, I haven't seen children sitting on the floor, but they do have where they have the parents come in to read to the children. Everybody has their own seat. Or they put them in a circle on the carpet where you can read the books to them. And I've done that every year for the past 5 or 6 years since I've been in Groveland, even though my granddaughter didn't go to Groveland Elementary. But we had at one time 20 acres for them to build a school on, and I think now it's becoming a charter school for that one area, but it's not going to be big enough for all the children because parents are hearing about it now. They want to send their kids there instead of letting them go to Groveland Elementary or Gray Middle. It has a lot, I think it has a lot to do with the teachers. Unfortunately, my granddaughter hated Groveland Elementary. But now that she's in Gray Middle, she loves it. So I think it has to do a lot with the teachers. And I know Miss Brown knows that something was going on with the teachers as well, because a lot of the teachers were leaving and not coming back. But they would not speak as to why that was happening. So what we're going to have to do is, when a builder comes in, we're going to have to talk them out of some property. We're going to have to build more schools, because the bigger the city gets, the more schools we're going to need, and the better educators we're going to need, not just those who get paid to babysit the kids and not pay attention to what they're doing.
We're starting our first charter school up on Cherry Lake. 5 acres were set aside. There are talks on another charter school being built by a different development. We have to come up with these ideas because the school board refuses to build a school here. When we started on Cherry Lake Park, 20 acres was supposed to be the park, 20 acres was supposed to be a school. The school said, we're not going to do it. We approached them and said, well, then can we have those 20 acres to add to our park? And we spoke to the developer. They had no problem with it. We took the 20 acres, so now there were 40 acres, and then we decided we've got to do something for the kids up there, because it's, multi-generation, a lot of young kids, young families. So we're building our first charter school there. I think there's 745 kids that are going to be there. One of the things that I questioned and made sure of up there, and so Cherry Lake Estates, I believe Cherry Lake Landing will be part of it. They have top priority to be in that school. I wanted to make sure that it isn't that kids from down here or Mineola or whatever, it's that area. And that's how all the charter schools are going to be set up, that it works that way.
Yeah, first I would question the premise of 150% in Groveland over. I think Claremont is there. We had a presentation from the school board at the planning and zoning, and we have capacity, tremendous capacity, I think, at the elementary. It has not been used, and we're not at capacity at grade middle. So I can't talk about, we didn't talk about the high school. But if we go back to the strategic plan, we got through the executive summary on the strategic plan, and when we were getting into the planning phase, part of that executive summary was to have neighborhood schools. And the reason we wanted to have neighborhood schools was because you didn't need 80 acres for a high school because of the people lining up to pick up their kids in their cars. And the same thing with the elementary schools was 40, and then it went on down to these smaller neighborhood schools where within walking distance don't require as much land. And so yes, we're okay with charter coming in, but also I would say let's take a look at Mascot, which maybe has a better formula where they have a company come in and the charter company actually reports to the city, not to an organization. And the feedback I've been getting from that Mascot school with this new charter system is through the roof, because the parents are running that charter, not a company out of Chicago or somewhere else. And they really were able to put the processes in that upgraded that school tremendously in its educational format. So I would say let's look at the schools that are at half capacity. And because they're at half capacity, because our kids are going somewhere else, right? And filling up other schools. If we've got capacity here, let's put it here. And by the way, if it is an elementary school that has half, then maybe they should go all the way through 8th grade with a charter kind of thing. But we've got capacity. We just need to keep our kids here in Groveland and give them the education that their families are.
So first, yeah, our school, Groveland Elementary, is not at capacity yet. If people actually sent all their kids here, it would be over capacity at this point. But because of school choice, they take them to all the charter schools in the neighboring counties, or not counties, cities, and the other schools in the county with that school choice option, they're not at capacity at this time. We can't make Lake County build more schools. I'm not sure about the high school, if it's at capacity or not. I don't have kids in that high school. But one of the formulas they use for determining capacity now is they actually factor a certain number of kids in for their online school program. And they factor in the seats in the charter schools. So as long as we have all of those things, there won't be new schools being built because it's cheaper to not do that. I love the idea of neighborhood schools. If we can get the land use, and again, while we're having these developers come in, make them give you the land for the neighborhood school. Go ahead and put that in. I have to look more at the Mascot charter school because having the parents run it, how to answer to the city is a big deal. I've been involved in charter schools in the past, and some of them are not up to standards. Okay, I have to say that nicely. The kids don't get the education there that they need to be getting because they don't believe in testing or they don't believe in the same amount of testing. There's a lot of things they don't do in the charter schools. They have different regulations. So we want to keep the kids' education as the highest priority. We want them to get a good education. So we want them to meet all those standards. So that's all very important. So if the government, like if they can answer to the city, that's a win, I think.
In recent years, many of Groveland's historic buildings have been demolished. In support of the Historical Society, the city recently passed a resolution to work towards preserving the remaining historic buildings, many of which are over 100 years old. Do you feel that preserving and promoting Groveland's history is important? And if so, what do you plan to do to continue expanding the resolution as well as preserving and promoting the history?
I think it's very, very important, and I'll bring another city in as an example. It's called New Orleans. It's called the French Quarter of New Orleans, or New Orleans, where they protect the facades of the building. You get a tax credit to keep the facade of that 100-year-old building intact. Because in many cases, when you have hay bale foundations and things like that, you can never meet code. So how do you preserve the look, the culture, the feel of the city. We look at how can we do tax credits for keeping the facades, and then go ahead and putting in the safe structure behind it for a restaurant or for a store, you know, because ADA, there's all kinds we all know all the stuff you've got to jump through, and it's very hard to do that in a 100-year-old building that has a foundation and everything else that won't live up. So yes, I would say we would protect it. Yes, it's part of our culture and our feel. Yes, with a bypass coming in, we're going to have walkable where people can walk in front of that. I don't think people want to walk down in front of a big old slab concrete building and shake a hand and say, hi, how are you? I mean, it's the difference between a community, a town, and a city. If we do some of these structures that, you know, these 6-story buildings in concrete, we're going to become a city, extension of Claremont, rather than be our Groveland with our values and our look and our feel. How you walk through a city and what you feel like when you walk through a town really develops how you react to other people. You know, cold hard surfaces, you react that way. You have historic values around you, it really makes you feel different and interact with other people in a much different way. So I would protect it at all costs, and I would make sure that when we do put new buildings in, that they have architectural standards that would make them blend in and not become a separate issue that looks like here's the old and here's the new. It's a very important thing for us to keep in mind.
So on that, I'm going to compare two different cities. So my family's from Fort Pierce, Florida. Okay, everybody knows Fort Pierce is a little tiny town on the east coast of Florida. They went with tear it all down and build new modern buildings. There's no charm, there's no small town feel there at all anymore, and it is still a teeny tiny town. I went to college in St. Augustine at Flagler College. I chose that school because of the charm, because of the feel, because of the city, the history of it. Obviously, it's 200 to 300 years old, some of those buildings, and the new buildings match. Like, they're structurally sound. They're not built out of coquito anymore, but you know, we, Tito's good. Never mind. I can't think of the word. Anyway. So they don't build them out of that anymore, but they match. They look like they could be 100 years old or 200 years old, and that's the kind of feel we need to keep downtown. And the buildings that are still there, we need to keep. We need to put up little plaques and tell people about it. What's the history of this building? What was it here for? All of those things are really important. It's part of where this city came from.
Historical preservation is very, very important. And unfortunately, just here a week or so ago, somebody ran into the Edge building and it's been damaged, and we don't know if that can be fixed. But we have people looking at it. But any of the historical buildings in Groveland need to be memorialized, so to speak. We need to keep all the history in Groveland that we possibly can. A lot of things like the old juice plant, the train station is still here. That needs to be preserved and redone. There's a way of preserving things without tearing the old part down. We can, a coat of paint, maybe some new nails in the floorboards, new windows. As long as the original building is still there, it's still a historical site. And we do need to preserve that. And I do believe that some of the people, or some of the employees of the city, are looking for historical grants to restore some of our buildings, because they definitely need it. I'd hate to see Groveland's historical buildings just fall apart because nobody cares. We've already lost too much over the past centuries or two, but we definitely need to do what needs to be done to keep all of our historical preservations.
Downtown is definitely historical, needs to be kept that way. It's what makes Groveland the city with natural charm. I'm really happy that it was voted on for the Historical Society to go and find the different homes or businesses, the buildings, that are historic. One concern that I have, because I think the upkeep on some of them have not been done, and that causes some of the problems when something hits it or whatever. I do know that with some of the buildings in the city, the landlords don't want to keep it up. And I hope when you are going around checking things, that you're able to find out and see and put it in, you know, that way possibly we can put pressure on them so we can keep those buildings. It is important. I believe that's why a lot of us moved here, because of the charm, the beauty. It took a while to move some of the stuff aside so we could see it, but it's now, we've enhanced it, and we've got to keep it going.
All right, you will now have 5 minutes each to give us any additional closing remarks. But in those 5 minutes, can you please name 3 things you've done to make a positive impact in this community?
Five minutes, 3 things done positive in the community. Hopefully, one was chairing the strategic planning committee. Did really a lot of the identifying of the historic areas and all the different initiatives that are in that executive summary is part of that. 2, serving on the planning and zoning board for 6 years. 2 coming up on 2 as chairman. 3. Trying to bring the community together, sponsoring a lot of events like the farmer chef events at our farm, where we bring in the Florida Farm Bureau farmers and the Central Florida Chefs Association and Daytona chefs, and they come in and they get together at our farm and they cook, which is great because the chefs compete against each other with the farmers' products, but they get to know the farmers so we can start developing the connection between the farm and the chef, because there's a different language. The middle guys always kept us apart because we call air couverts, which are the tiny green beans, air couverts, and the farmer calls them Blue Lake number 12. And so, I mean, it really is important that we bring people together in an atmosphere where you can talk and not force people to do things and not regulate it. So the 5 minutes in closing. Well, the 5 minutes in closing is I love this town. I love this town because it's everything that where I grew up was. Other than our clay roads, how many of you remember this? When we had clay roads, I used to spray them with oil to keep the dust down. That's how far back I go, you know, to keep the dust down. But I saw my hometown that my grandfather was a founder of get developed, like that's Lake Harry, get developed right out of what it was. I saw, now you can't even tell me where town center is in Lake Harry. And I don't want to see that happen here. I love walking down the street or going over to Lake Catherine or going different places and saying hi to somebody and they say hi back. When I go to Claremont now and I say hi to somebody, they think I'm going to ask them for money or something and they don't even reply. There's a different value system here. And that value system is vanishing. And that's why I love this town. And that's why I will fight to preserve that in this town. Because everybody can grow around us, and we can be the place where everybody can come and decompress because they need to get out of Claremont, they got to get out of Winter Garden, get out of these places, go somewhere where they can see green, where they can see country, where they can see some hills, where they can see a farm, where they can see an orange tree. As simple as that, you know? And so that's why I'm running. I want my grandkids who live here in Groveland now, when they go off to college, to say, I want to come back to Groveland. Not go off and say, well, I'm going to go find other places because maybe that's not a cool place to be or whatever. And cool isn't the disco. Cool is someplace where you have places to go, places to see, places to do things and go kayaking on the Blue Way or do all different things that we have a potential to do here to keep our kids coming back here. And so that's why I'm running for mayor. As simple as that. I want to bring a layer of business knowledge to the government, to this local government. I think the city council is in charge of the organizational chart. I mean, just think of a company that has a $327 million budget, has one CEO and 11 directors, no operations, no second in command, 1 in 11 directors ain't gonna work for that, stop that kind of thing. We can see it already. We're moving pipes. Why are we moving pipes? They were put in the wrong way by people that we had put those pipes in. Trees, we put in trees. We were moving the trees because we got the wrong trees in. We need to have we need to set up a system, an organization where one guy is in charge of everything, but you have different experts that people are reporting to. That's the way not only you benefit the community, but you start getting a succession plan and ways for people to move up in the structure and either move up or go get a good job somewhere else. When you've got 1 in 11, there's no progress up the ladder. So why I'm running business, heart, tradition, I mean, that's it. Really, really, we can talk about traffic, we can talk all that stuff, but it comes down at the end of the day to maintaining the values of this city.
All right, so the reason, let's see, 3 things I've done positive in our community. I'm an admin for the Facebook page, Keeping Groveland Honest. Some of you are familiar with that. We post all kinds of things on there. Sometimes we find things that we think are less than savory, but it's all about keeping people informed. I think that people need to know tax money is essentially our money. Where is our money going? We want it to go into our community. We want to build a community. So that's one of the things we've done. Number 2, I think this summer I taught 50 kids in our community to swim. So I think that's a big deal. Drowning is the leading cause of death in children under 5. So teaching them to swim is hopefully preventing some of that. So I definitely take that. Number 3 is recently I helped talk to our firefighters as they were getting into negotiating their contract. I started posting the things that our neighboring fire departments were making. There was a little bit of pressure put on, and ultimately that worked out successfully. A big supporter of first responders, and a big supporter of my husband is a law enforcement officer. He does not work for Groveland. If he did, I probably wouldn't be running because I would think that's a conflict of interest, but he does not work for Groveland. He does not work for Lake County. So other than that closing, I just want to help build community. I want to build transparency. I want to hold people accountable. I want to know where everything's going, and I think you all should know too. I don't like secrets. We don't keep secrets. So, down with the secrets.
I moved here in 2002. A few years after that, they cleaned out the lot next door to me to build a grocery store. But before that happened, I went to Publix, Winn-Dixie, any grocery store I could find to see if they couldn't come to Groveland because we didn't have one. And finally, Publix decided to build next door. So they were going to put a wall between Publix and my subdivision that was going to be about 12 feet. And I went over there in a huff and I said, if this place gets robbed, where do you think those people are going to go? Right into the subdivision next door because there's no way to keep them out. So they decided to make the wall all the way down to where the water plant is. Then after we got the Publix, Evelyn and I both were on the MPO. 15 years we have fought for the realignment of Highway 50. And finally now, in 2026, they're going to start building it. which is mostly going to be for the trucks, because the businesses don't like the trucks coming down the middle of Main Street rattling their windows. And then we worked on the trails. So there'll be a trail that comes from Silver Eagle all the way through Groveland up to Mascot. So that's number 2. Number 3 is the second Friday. We had one in the beginning when I first moved here, and it only lasted maybe a year. And then it stopped. And then somebody tried to start one out here in the parking lot. That didn't last very long. And then when Mike Walker came along, we talked to him about doing an event every month. He thought it was a good idea, so we looked into it. And then we started the second Friday farmers market, which went well. It wasn't great, but now it's called the second Friday block party, and it's starting to build. Well, 2 months ago, they decided they wanted to put a stop to the block party for a couple of months, and I pitched a holy fit. I said, if you do that, they won't come back. We're just now getting it to build, but if you stop it, we'll never get them back. They'll just keep going to Claremont. So they did something different, and now that we're back doing the block parties again, it's starting to build. It's getting better every time we have one. And in the month of, they're going to have one in the month of October, but then on Halloween, they're going to have the grand opening of the Cherry Lake Park up on Wilson Lake Parkway, but they're also going to have Trick or Trunk. It's going to be a big grand opening up on top of that hill. So we're all looking forward to that. But we have to keep the communication going. We have to keep the events going. And we have to do everything we can for the citizens to keep them in Groveland and to keep them happy.
Got them to move State Road 50 up to 2026. It was supposed to be 2032, and I connected with our state representatives, and now I support them, they support me. It is a tough thing getting roads done. Any kind of road work is difficult because there are so many cities in Lake County vying for the same money. And right now, we are getting a big chunk of that money from the county and the state because State Road 50, 19, they're doing a study on, and they're working on it. They're doing the turnpike, which that I started in 2009, where they thought I was from Mars, and to open that north and south. It had been originally, but somebody wanted a favor, and they shut the northbound on 285 and put it 6 miles up the road to 289. And they finally realized and went to the turnpike agency and told them, asked, would you be willing to open it? And they said yes right away. We lost 9 years basically on that one. It should be done next year. With that, they will be doing the clover leaf, which also will probably help with the 1927 entrance, and they're widening the roads up there. We were not recognized, and I have gotten into their faces because a lot of you, if you come up 27, you see that the 3 lanes stop at Mineola City Hall and then start again by Leesburg. We have been treated like the stepchildren, and I have been fighting that for years. I have made us noticed in the county and in the state. I work with New Beginnings for affordable housing. I just recently got to back an attorney who was working with a developer, back him against the wall to agree to build for at least 40 homes in their development that will be workforce housing. That means housing for police, fire, nurses, teachers, those that can't afford the prices of some of these houses. I work with that. I work with the Elise Tomlin Center, her events that she has every year. We're going to be able to do the ribbon cutting for that building. That went up in no time. We just did the groundbreaking and it's almost completed. But the one thing, and don't stop me, when I moved here, people didn't say they lived in Groveland. And some of you know that, remember that. They would say they lived in Claremont or they lived in Orlando, and I made it a promise that you will be proud of your city. You will have smiles on. You can walk around now and they will say they live in Groveland. They're happy. They come out to the events. They didn't. And I know this upsets you, but it's the truth. When I moved here, I didn't meet you till a few years ago, but back then, there were a number of people right here in Groveland, in the old area of Groveland, who wouldn't say they lived in Groveland. So I can't help it. I'm glad they're doing it now. We have come so far, and we just got to keep going. There's so many things and that's the reason why I am running again also, because I am involved in so many different projects, and I want to complete them.
So that's the end of our questions today, and so I just want to thank the candidates, Ms. Sweat, Wilson, Ms. Carroll, and Mr. Kehoe. I would also like to thank Ms. Keeble for our moderator, Mr. Elfrick for our timekeeper, and also Ms. Hoover and Mrs. Brown for setting up the refreshments and decorations and stuff we have here today. I'd also like to thank the Parks and Recreation Department for the use of the building today. And we will now have about 30 minutes for refreshments and meet and greet, so everybody here is welcome to talk with your candidates if you would like to stay and have an opportunity to learn from them directly. The museum will also be open for anyone from now, again, for the next half hour or so, but we're also open 1 to 3 normal hours. And again, admission is free on every Saturday, and also during the second Friday and other downtown events. So you're welcome to come by and check it out. And thank you again for everybody.